The following is a live broadcast of a Lone Star community radio program, recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and facebook.com/irlonestar. For more information on this show, please visit our show page at irlonestar.com/shows. To sponsor or donate to this program, visit our donate page at irlonestar.com/donate, or email us at lscrstudios@gmail.com, or give us a call at 936-666-1084. Lone Star Community Radio production and broadcast is possible by folks like you. So sponsor and donate today.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Legal Connection with Tony and Cheryl. Tony Lynn Collins and Cheryl Ellsworth Jahani. We are two Texas licensed attorneys, and we are here every Tuesday on 104.5 and 106.1 Conroe's FM, talking about legal matters. Today we're going to be talking about contact tracing,
right,
and the company that was awarded the $295 million
right,
Texas contact tracing responsibility or development or whatever it is.
right. And we're going to have Grant Bynum, your brother, who's also the head of Contact
Texans Against Contact Tracing,
Right.
and also Open Texas. So
Right.
those are Facebook groups.
And this is a continuation of the show that we had about 2 weeks ago. When this first came out, it was kind of little known, and now it's picked up some steam. And so I'm just going to recap a couple of things about this issue that are important, and then we're going to let Grant talk about some of the issues that he's been confronted with the different things that he's doing with his group, right? Okay, so this particular contact tracing is I guess the best way to put it is it's what has been, I guess I'm reading it's probably the best. It's been about 2 weeks since it was revealed that Governor Abbott and the Texas Department of State Health Services had entered into a contract that was with a little-known North Texas company that was just set up about about 2 years ago, but they were really a New York-based company, and it's very, very small. It's only got when Grant went about 2 weeks ago to videotape this, where the facility is in Frisco, nobody was even in the building,
right? And
they were awarded this huge contract, and so
the name of the company is
MTX Group, and this little-known North Texas company recently won the state's nod to coordinate contact tracing for coronavirus patients. It's currently hired 605 people for the job. This is as of yesterday, but is offering few details of how it will help Texas achieve its ambitious goals. And the problem that we're having with this, and the reason it's an issue, is there's a privacy issue, because the way they're doing it is contacting the friends of people that may have had coronavirus or COVID,
right,
to see if they'll give them information. And they also have their application is through Google and Apple, where they can use your phone to trace where you've been. And so there's a huge privacy issue with regard to the rights that we have in the Constitution and our Fourth Amendment rights. And we talked a little bit about Carpenter versus United States, which was a Supreme Court case from about 2 years ago that said that they can't do this without a court order.
Right.
And so the reason it's really important today, specifically, because this is all going down right now, is that first off, the CEO of the technology company that's been entrusted with this state contract for tracing efforts for Texans exposed to coronavirus has claimed a doctorate he never got. He lied on his application. And this was some research that was done by some reporters with the Houston Chronicle. And it ends up that when they did the investigation and they called the college, they said that he had never received a doctorate, that this person didn't graduate in that part of it. In fact, the last attendance they had for this guy was 2010, and he said that he had graduated in 2012. So they didn't vet this company. And the senators are complaining, Texas senators, even Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said, I haven't seen this contract. And when these reporters and various senators have asked for the contract, they haven't been given a copy of it.
Right.
On May 5th, it was, I think it was like May 1st of last month, they asked for submissions for contract from like IBM and Accenture and various other companies.
On May 5th?
But on May 5th is when they opened up the application process.
Right.
But they closed it on May 7th.
And gave it to this
this
MTX.
company. And over all these other companies that had experience and background. And
the company's experience and background, what companies?
IBM, Accenture, and other companies
So
have actually done it.
huge companies.
MTX only has Kentucky that they have even a contract with. They actually have implemented it, and they're over budget and not doing well, according to what these articles said. And so we don't. We know that two lobbyists were paid $100,000 by MTX to go to Austin and lobby for this contract, and they got it. We've got senators, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today, Texas senators that are saying, we have not seen this, we have not asked about it, it wasn't vetted properly, and we're uncomfortable with this. And so we'll talk about that too. And so since...
let's get Grant on.
Yeah, since Grant is involved in this, and we've got a bunch of senators and people
Well,
who
he
are
started
unhappy.
it, really, Tony. As a matter of fact, he's gotten some flack, especially in the beginning, for even addressing MTX. So can we bring Grant on? Grant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, y'all.
How are you, Grant? Thank you for waiting. There was an issue with some power here at the station, and so things got a little behind schedule. But Grant Bynum, a founder of Open Texas and founder of Texans Against Contact Tracing, we're glad you could be here with us today.
It's so great to be here again, and I feel like that I'm on the best legal show in the nation because nobody is addressing the kind of issues that you are as quickly. There's
Right.
very few people taking the lead, so I want to thank you for doing
Well, we
that.
know the Laura Ingraham show. She covered the entire thing after we did.
Yeah.
After your
We
help.
did
in bringing
first, Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She brought up
Yeah.
Carpenter versus U.S. and talking about the privacy issues and how we're being traced and we shouldn't be and all that. But you've been right there on top of it, filming where there's nobody even in this office. And so tell us about what's going on in your rallies and what you found out.
Well, it's been very recent for me. I think that when we had talked first a couple of weeks ago, I had just had about 8 days or so of knowledge really to even start looking at. I'd heard of it, but it just hadn't registered that it was a big issue.
Right.
And if you notice the press conferences that Governor Abbott does,
Yeah.
well, most of the time, if you're like me, you're listening to the conference and you're waiting for the openings, like who's going to get to open, which restaurant at 50%, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody leaves, and then he starts talking about contact tracing, and everybody is ignoring it. But it's the biggest issue of all. to
Yeah,
me.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
nearly a $300 million contract to this company that's not been vetted. What happened to the people that are the companies in Texas? Why didn't they get it? I mean, all this stuff must be coming up in your rallies. We have a copy of a letter from Senator Bob Hall where he kind of bullet
Have you
points
seen this,
out.
Grant, the letter?
Yes, he actually, we know him really well. He's been a good friend of ours, and he's standing up. He's speaking at our rallies. He actually sent us that release before it got released,
Oh.
just as a courtesy.
Yeah, it's just that's crazy that we've got senators who've never seen this contract, and even Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said he hasn't seen the contract and he's looking into this. I mean, it's really an issue. So, but what have you found out that we haven't discussed? I don't know if you heard our opening, but we tried to give a little bit
I did.
of a heads up.
I
Okay,
did.
so what do we need to know?
Well, here's several things, and you know what? Because I love you guys, I'm actually going to release something that has not been released yet.
Oh,
You're
yeah?
going to get a little bombshell on the show.
Okay.
So get ready. But before I do, because it's changing all the time and information's being added. First thing is I want to give Jess Fields credit because he's the individual investigative reporter that broke a lot of the stuff last week. As
I
far as the
saw his
doctorate.
name, yes, over there.
Yes, he's amazing.
It's his podcast.
Yes, he's an independent, and everybody broke it after he did.
Yeah.
So
And
I want to give him credit.
I'm just going to say this one thing. I'm going to read it. It's right straight out of an article that was in the Houston Chronicle.
Yeah.
The Jeff Fields Show podcast recorded audio an exchange with the registrar's office at Colorado Technical University.
Mm-hmm.
The woman who answered the phone can be heard telling Fields that Noble did not get a doctorate degree from the school and that there was no record of the attendance past June of 2010. So he's doing the investigative reporting that's breaking this open to show that there's corruption. And I'm going to say one other thing before I let you talk, and that's that lawmakers, including Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, continue to say they're dismayed by the agency's, and that's the Department of Health with Texas, the agency's hastily awarded contract. We should have been in the loop, and we should have known. We should have been able to ask questions, Patrick told supporters during a town hall via phone Thursday. A spokesman for the Department of State Health Services, however, said the agency is happy with the company's performance so far, which also involved launching a virtual call center. And that's just, I don't believe that that's the case, is it? What can you tell us?
Well, I've got a lot to tell you, so you're going to have to probably stop me because there's so much.
Okay.
But let's talk a few other things first. Is when Jess did a really interesting take. There's people already investigating some other things about MTX Group, but he just said I'm going to check them out. So I want to highlight a couple other things he said. Okay. One of the things that was a huge point is the MTX Group. Okay, you Tony, you mentioned that they've only really completed one project
in Kentucky.
They are in, but they are in about, I think about at least 8 other states.
Right,
I've heard 15 even.
Mm-hmm,
well, so we're talking billions of dollars here,
right?
And that they're with. I don't have the exact number, but billions.
Mm-hmm.
So so I visited the Frisco office, as I said, and it's an office that it looks like it costs $2,000 to $3,000 a month max, and it's a teeny office. Well, I thought, okay, surely their New York office is, a massive office. Well, this is what just found out. That office in New York is a house.
Oh, no.
A house.
That's ridiculous.
Like a little bitty house?
Like, I don't know how big, but it's a house. It might be a condo. I don't know, but it's a house. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's kind of right along with what you're saying. This is really important. Asked at the state, because the president of MTX did an interview, and he hasn't done one before, and it was limited. But I'm just going to read these couple of things that goes right with what you're saying. The MTX group also developed a learning management system for newly hired tracers that includes training on IT systems and the federal health information privacy law. That doesn't make any sense. Through Texas Health Trace, the state will collect data from 4,000 tracers being deployed in Texas by public-private entity groups. MTX Group will provide scheduling, he said, for 1,450 tracers now on board. Now, it says those hired by MTX, 2 state agencies, and Texas A&M University. I don't know how they fit in, how that group fits in. Asked if the state is pleased with MTX, the MTX Group's initial work. Van Dusen, and he is, I'm not even sure what his relationship is with the group, but you probably know, said, we are satisfied. They've been working really quickly. They've got calling solutions stood up in a matter of days over a weekend. They have been, to this point, very good. And it says, really, we have no concerns about the work they've done, but they haven't done any work yet. Earlier this month, MTX won the contract over 10 other bidders, including major corporations such as IBM, Accenture, and AT&T, prompting an outcry by some lawmakers that MTX lacked experience to handle such a big job. And it goes on to say the Kentucky problem. Noble, who's the president and CEO, I guess, with his wife, declined to discuss in detail the cost overruns that have plagued a project that MTX Group was hired by the state of Kentucky to perform last summer. In late January, MTX Group proposed that Kentucky Department of Alcohol Beverage Control pay it $2.9 million, a 123% increase over its original bid, according to the records obtained by the news in Dallas.
So they're having problems with this was in Kentucky?
And they're asking for $3 million more in Kentucky, and they didn't even finish the job. It says the project involved using Salesforce software for many aspects of the agency's licensing and regulatory process. So it didn't even have to do with this, but they weren't completing the project.
Well, right, Tony, but let's get Grant to tell us the other things that he knows before we get into Kentucky. Let's focus on Texas.
The last thing is MTX to date has 0 failed projects, according to what he's saying, but they have 0 completed projects from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and it was the Kentucky one that they started. Grant, Kentucky is the only project that they've started so far, or have they done anything in New York?
I think that I don't want to say because I don't know. I know
Right.
that they have at least 8 projects that they've been awarded. I don't know what status they are in it. So I don't know.
Okay.
I do. This is what I do know.
Right.
So not only is their Albany office, and that used to be their corporate office, in
Right.
Albany, New York, but now it's Frisco. But that not only is it a residence, but there are multiple corporations at that residence, all owned by
The one in New
DOS.
York? Oh,
Yep.
really?
Yeah, he's got a Noble Real Estate is another corporation there, in a house. He's got at least one more, if not 2 more, and I just don't have the name of the third one. So he's got at a minimum of 3 all in one house. So
It's a house.
that's just very, very concerning.
Yeah.
Another couple of things, and I don't know if we covered it. We covered just some general things like they don't have anybody on staff that's ever run a call center. When you have 4,000 people that you're going to train and then do a call center as contact tracers, that's not a good thing. We don't want to hire somebody like that. The other companies that were looked over do have call center experience. They're companies like Accenture, IBM,
Right.
and companies like that. So they don't have any of that kind of experience.
Right.
One thing that I'm going to reveal is there's actually 2 project failures, not just one.
Okay.
I can't reveal the other one yet, but there are 2 project failures of the MTX group. And Doss Noble recently said, "Oh, we've never failed any project." But
Right.
there are 2.
Well, we know he's just not telling the truth.
Well,
because-
right. About the whole degree thing. Grant, I'm sure you guys know about that, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's just,
Well, I want to say that
He's
he does
lying.
say in his defense that he says MTX chief financial officer said Noble never claimed he had a doctorate, even though it's all over everything. We believe it's important to make it extremely clear. We and DOS have never presented on any document, resume, bid response, NFP response, or biography to any entity that he possesses or ever has possessed a doctorate or a PhD, MTX CEO Christina Bailey wrote in an email. This question is emanating from DOS' LinkedIn profile. But the thing is he's a one-person show, and he does real estate, and he doesn't have the same background or experience to do what we just gave a $300 million contract to a guy that just opened an office that's from New York.
Yeah.
This makes no sense. And I know
Yes.
that they also read that that the legislature, the senators, have been asking for a copy of this contract, and they haven't provided a copy of the contract yet. That's insane. We know that the McWilliams, Deandra, and I think I guess maybe her brother or husband, but two lobbyists got $50,000. Were paid $50,000 each, and went to Austin. I guess May 5th or somewhere around the time that they submitted this application, and then they got the contract by May 7th. What contract opening is only open for 2 days?
Yeah.
and then awarded
Yes.
to somebody that no one even knows and that's not from Texas.
Yes, I agree. And just to add a little context to that, I've been involved with RFPs, and nothing along to that level. But I've been involved with RFPs and submitting proposals and things like that for it to up to 5 people, 5 companies, that is. So personally, in my background, I've had that. And in that kind of process, that's just 3 to 5 companies. That's a multi-month
Grant.
process.
Well, so how did that happen? I mean, they've got these 2 lobbyists there. I mean, we know that there have been some issues with campaign contributions from MTX to some of your local council people, I believe, Grant, and things like that. But I just don't see that making them decide so quickly. Was it because they were all scared about COVID and Oklahoma had hired them and New York had hired MTX, so Texas just said, yeah, that'll work for us too?
I don't know, but I have my suspicions, but I don't know. But I do know that the person that signed this contract is Phil Wilson, and I want to bring up his name. Phil Wilson is an interim acting executive leader of the Department of Health and Human Services in Texas. He literally got hired in early March, so around, very interestingly, right around the time that all the COVID concerns and executive orders were being talked about and came out. So he has to my knowledge, no medical experience. However, he does have plenty of experience with the state of Texas in other roles. In other words, my suspicion is he's just a bureaucrat.
He's a politician.
That's kind of politician that they just. And again, this is just me. I don't have any knowledge or exact. I haven't done the research, but I'm very suspicious that he was brought in, and all of a sudden he made this huge decision. And again, it was in 2 days. So there's something wrong with that.
I will say this. Okay, go ahead. Well, the Houston Chronicle says the deal appears to have been put together within just a few days. On MTX hired Austin-based lobbyists Andrea and Dean McWilliams for up to $50,000 each, according to public disclosure documents. And this is the reporters from the Chronicle. Others who submitted bids include contracting giants, and we already talked about that, Accenture and Maximus, IBM, representatives of the company said. And but just I want to go back, and I know that you'll have a lot more information about this because you've been having the rallies and what have you. But the contact tracing, the way they won't talk about how they're implementing it, but this is what it talks about in an article called Texas Scorecard, and I'm not sure. They're just, I guess they're like a group of people that kind of watches out with what's going on with our government. It says, according to the CDC, do you know who the Texas?
I do. They're with Empower Texans, so that's kind of their online vehicle, and they tend to be a conservative group.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'm just looking at, they've collected data, which is important to this because we're really not getting anything from the government, so we have to rely on other sources like you and Texas Scorecard and Jess Fields and what have you. According to the CDC, contact tracers need to, and this is how their Texas Scorecard says contact tracing is supposed to work. Immediately identify and interview people with SARS or CoV-2 infections and COVID-19. So the first thing is identify people that have been tested positive, which is really kind of difficult in Texas because you can't rely on a lot of the testing, but that's a medical issue. I don't really know anything about it. Then the next thing is support isolation of those who are infected. So I guess once you find out who's infected, now from their neighbors or the hospital or wherever you get this stuff that's supposed to be private information, they're supposed to support them, like help them, call them, and give them guidance, I guess. I don't know how this MTX is going to do that because I understand that they're hiring only college students. So where's the college student background to be supporting these people? But that's what I understand.
Do you know, Grant? Do you know how they're going to do this?
Yes, somewhat. I do somewhat. So I will share what I know. So you brought up a good point that traditional contact tracing is supposed to be supervised under a physician. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the physician making the call, but it's going to be someone that all that information goes to the physician. Mm-hmm. So and that's kept and again protected by HIPAA. Right. And it's also voluntary. So if that's in the past. If a person that had SARS or TB or AIDS said no, then it's not going to happen, and that's just the end of it.
Right.
But in this case, what will happen is there's 4,000, like you said, University of North Texas students, because that's close to the Frisco office, and other people that they're going to hire that have no medical knowledge or background, and they're going to be making calls to folks. So they're going to be making calls. They're also going to be documenting it using Salesforce. Right. That's a very sophisticated CRM, customer relationship management kind of software that's going to be adapted for this. So, and this is a 27-month contract.
Right.
Did you say a 27-month contract?
Right. And Senator Hall talks about that in his letter to Governor Abbott that we're going to talk about a little bit. And Senator Hall's asking that he please don't go forward with it. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But that these kids are just, we have kids that are in college. They're not trained to know what the HIP, I guess they could be as on a one-day training center or session or whatever. But they're going to be asking private questions and to people that are giving out because they're going to believe that they need to be giving out, and they won't know their rights unless they read their rights first. If I had COVID, I doubt seriously I'm going to tell a telephone solicitor all my business. I wouldn't tell them anything, but that's kind of here nor there. The other things that they say that they're
but it was voluntary before. Grant, did you say that this will all be mandatory? They will have to answer these questions now?
Christy, a lot of people are saying it's voluntary.
Yeah, I've never read anything saying that it was mandatory. The problem is when you ask somebody a question and they don't know that it's not required by
Right.
statute,
Right.
then they're going to give up information that's private that they shouldn't
And
be.
they don't want to give
and
up.
It will, and yeah, that's and then the tracing with the phones and using these applications on all the different ways that they can use it, because they're talking about, when I was reading about the MTX background, they're using a Google or a Facebook application program. So clearly that's not just calling somebody, that's getting information and then finding out their phone number and then tracing where they've been and who they're talking with.
Oh, yeah.
That's a violation under Carpenter versus United States. Carpenter versus United States. That's definitely a constitutional violation under the Fourth Amendment. Anyway, the other things they say they're doing, and I don't know how they're going to do this, but they say they're going to warn contacts of their exposure, assess their symptoms and risk, and provide instructions for the next steps. I don't know how these college kids are doing this, but I think it's completely unethical to warn their contacts. So, by the way, your friend's got COVID, or the person that you do business with has got COVID. What if that's incorrect? What if they answered the question wrong?
Exactly. Well, and these tests are so unreliable anyway. It creates just this incredible mess.
Yeah, and then it's like having the big, the mark, an A,
Yeah.
the adultery A or whatever. You've marked yourself now, and this could get out a list because it's no longer private. It says they're going to link that information they've collected with symptoms to testing and care. And at this point, they're not really helping the person that's got COVID anymore.
No.
They're tainting that person.
They're tattling on them.
And it says they have to maintain and turn over. And this is to finish that section. Link those with symptoms to testing and care, and then they have to turn over to police if they're asked. That's crazy.
If the police ask them. See, all of this stuff says it's voluntary and all that, but
that's insanity. That's
yeah.
a complete HIPAA violation.
Well, so I think the important thing, Grant, since we have you on the phone and we want to use you as a resource, it's, we're upset. We're all upset about MTX, right? You're upset about MTX, but that's not really, it doesn't stop there. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We don't want this contact tracing, period. Is that right? Is that your stand?
Yes, but to really make the process go forward, it's important to stop the contract, because at that point, once we stop the contract, we need to have a discussion, a well-rounded discussion with a lot of people that's really led by our legislators. That's kind of the key part. When this was introduced, it's one thing to give the Texas Department of Health and Human Services leeway to spend a little money on something that doesn't affect any new laws or bring any new laws.
Right. And I love the way Senator Hall talks about all that.
Yeah, this breaks so many new laws. So we need a really wide-ranging discussion about even moving forward on contact tracing, much less this contract, and it needs to be run by the legislature.
Now,
I frankly believe that once that happens, it will be stopped for good.
I think it would be informative for our listeners as well as you too, because I love Senator Hall's letter that he wrote to Governor Abbott.
Yes.
It addresses each one of the things you just talked about. So Christine's going to read that to us.
Just from your perspective.
Read his letter. It's great.
Well, I don't want to read the whole thing with Grant on the phone.
Okay.
But he does make the point of liberty lost. No, I like this, Grant. No matter how much lipstick you put on this project, mass surveillance and data collection constitute a gross invasion of privacy and trampling of individual liberty. Bob Hall is senator for District 2. Grant, where is that? Is that Canton?
It's Rockwall.
Oh, okay.
So
Rockwall.
That's going to be a suburb really close to Dallas.
Right, yeah. And so that's fantastic. Somebody cared. Anger, he says people have had enough of excessive and unnecessary government overreach. And, the whole thing with all this research, I know, Grant, you and I have talked about this so many times, is that because a state of emergency has been declared, they are rushing all this stuff through. Nothing applies anymore because we're in this state of emergency. And he just talks about health and well-being and how crime has increased and it's unnecessary, non-COVID deaths because of unemployment and economic stresses. So true. And then he's talking about the contract was awarded with no legislative oversight. This is what you've been saying, actually, and Tony's been saying, no legislative oversight and without due process safeguards mandated by legislation. And then he's talking about the feasibility, but where do you see, so do you really feel like, I feel like you've started two very important grassroots movements. This thing about MTX is just started by you, Grant, and I know that. Personally have knowledge of that. But where do you see, do you think because of all of this interest and focus that you yourself have stirred up with the help of those that are helping you, have stirred up, do you think it's possible for us to sit down and have a real discussion about whether this should even go forward? What do you think is going to happen?
I do. I think with, frankly, we did a lot of work in the background. There's been a lot of work done by many people, not just me. I'm just one person. But with all the people like Senator Hall and then some recent people that, this was just released. There's 3 more representatives that have joined up and said this is absolutely wrong.
Good.
So there's about 7.
Who are they?
7 or 8 now. One of them is Steve Toth in your area.
I thought it was,
so
right.
He's
Really?
the early one. Yeah, he's one of the first 2 or 3, so thank you, Steve. Also, Valerie Swanson. Let's see. Hold on just a second. I have him written down. Tinderholt, and I don't remember his first name. I think he's in East Texas. Tinderholt, and then Briscoe Kane.
Okay.
And he's, I believe, in the Austin area. So he just is joining and saying, no, we're stopping this contract.
Yeah, I had read that Steve Toft was against it, and so I was waiting for you to see bring that one up if you hadn't. But yes.
So if the contract is withdrawn, then and that goes away, then you're hoping what? What will happen next?
I believe that it will basically be run through legislature through the next session, or we need to call a special session, frankly. If the Texas Department of Health and Human Services is so insistent, and Governor Abbott, frankly, is so insistent on pushing this on us, then we need a legislature to decide on that. This does not need to be decided by executive order. So I believe that will happen, and the momentum is going our side.
Well, I know that I read some articles where even Senator Hall was saying that this is going to be a taint on Governor Abbott's his legacy if something hasn't been done about this. And basically, what Senator Hall was saying was, for these reasons, we need to reconsider it. We've lost our liberty. People are angry because there's too much unnecessary government overreach. There's fear because it's caused by the federal, state, and local governments who overreach about this virus. It's overcoming the fear in the hearts of Texans is the major obstacle to getting our economy moving and our communities back to living, even when all government restrictions have been removed. Contact tracing will only prolong that fear.
No kidding.
It says, and because our economy is driven by commerce requires 2 things: consumer confidence and money flow. Fear, if unabated, stifles commerce, and stifled commerce will restrict the flow of money. Without growth in commerce and an increase in the flow of money, our economy cannot recover. Contact tracing will prolong fears that thus restrict economic growth. We've got the health and well-being. And then he goes on to talk about a big reason is the contractor, and it's something we've been talking about over and over, and it's so important. The state contract was awarded with no legislative oversight, without the due process safeguards mandated by our legislation. Questions remain as to the efficacy of the selected contractor, MTX. These are reports citing its failure to fulfill the terms of its own previous agreements. How could a company with a questionable performance record have been rigorously vetted in such a short acquisition period? 2 days. There's no way. How do we expect...
2 days, 11 companies.
Yes. How do we expect a company that has only a few small $1 to $2 million contracts to manage a $300 million contract that requires rapid mobilization? What proof is there that this company...
And it's not just Texas. They've got contracts with other states, too. How can this tiny little company take on all these states?
Senator Hall says it best. He says, what proof is there that a company with only a couple of hundred employees located mostly in India can recruit, train, and manage over 4,000 tracers to do something that has never been attempted on this scale? The feasibility is, to what extent is contact tracing on the scale necessary to reduce the rate of the infection, to prevent an outbreak even feasible if it depends on voluntary reporting by citizens who shouldn't have to give that up anyway? The data strongly supports and suggests that there are many times as many people with the virus who are asymptomatic than there are people people who have been tested positive. Therefore, contact tracing will only identify a very small percentage and invade their privacy. And I just want to add that he is saying that this is what we're requesting of Governor Abbott. I know this is what you're saying in your rallies because he says it so well. In fact, this might be your words that he is using in this. It is clear that the initial predictions that we all reacted to were grossly wrong. Contact tracing may have been some limited value that has been implemented at the very beginning of the outbreak. However, at this point, a statewide tracing system is not necessary. We also now know that the elderly and immune compromised are by far the most vulnerable, not the young and healthy. Rather than squandering our resources by continuing policies that assume homogeneous infection and death distributions among age groups, our limited resources should be deployed far more effectively by focusing on those the most vulnerable. Your leadership, and he's talking to Governor Abbott, has been instructional in flattening the infection curve and limiting death. So we should give kudos for Governor Abbott for that. Your promoting physical distancing resulted in far fewer hospitalizations. Kudos to Governor Abbott for that, because it's true. Unlike at the beginning of this emergency in March, and because of your leadership, the hospitals are now prepared and equipped to handle any sudden surge. We are currently using less than 2% of the hospital beds for COVID patients, and hospitalizations are declining. And I know that for a fact. My husband's a doctor, and he said that. Now, this is what he's asking. Do you remember Governor Perry's ill-fated, ill-advised, ill-conceived HPV vaccine mandate that was such a disaster that it permanently stained his legacy? That blunder pales in comparison to this proposed tracking program.
Yeah.
Please reconsider this decision while Texans still have confidence in your leadership. Governor Hall said it best, and then he ceases it to Lieutenant Dan Patrick. And I know that I wanted to have you talking more than this, but this is your words to me. This is your words to the community. Everything you have said has been said by Governor Hall as though you were having a coffee talk with him. So
Well, I think you have, haven't you, Grant? He's been at your rallies.
He's a friend. We text it, but he said it much better than I did. Frankly, he's a brilliant man.
I don't think so. Everything he said is exactly what you've said.
Okay, well, he's a brilliant man, and he's a very courageous man, and I would vote for him for any office.
Really?
Well,
Yes.
everything that we've talked
That's
about,
great.
though, is just scaring me to death. And now, what else can you tell us that we don't know about your rallies? It hasn't gotten crazy like the riots and stuff we've had recently, but what's going on with all that?
We had a rally last week. I believe it was the first one in Texas, and we wanted to. We've only been operational for about 2 weeks, but we wanted to get something in place. So we had about 150 at that first rally, and this was in Frisco. This was on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
So it was a great turnout.
Yeah.
And but when we went to the rally, it was actually at the MTX group headquarters in Frisco. It was really funny because Doss knows about our group, and he's actually sent me messages. And he sent me a message, and he said, "Hey Grant," he actually called me Bynum. Hey Bynum. hey Bynum, just want to let you know, I know about your protest, and want to let you know, hey, that's no problem. Hey, we respect democracy and protest. So you just come on and do your protest, and hey, let me know if you want some restaurant food and water. We'll take care of you.
But
then what
he's
happened?
being antagonistic,
Yes.
obviously.
He's being rude.
Yeah. So then we ended up, and you know this, Christy, I've been talking to you about it, but we went to the rally, and we show up. He's got three security guard cars.
Now we know where that 300 million's going.
Yeah, three cars, and they're all saying you can't park here. So we go about 10 minutes away and park. And I said, but we're still going to walk here, but we're just not going to park in here. He said, okay, well, can't control that. So we went ahead and parked, and then we came back, walked back, and then 4 or 5 huge police cars showed up. And in our rallies, we have never had a police car ever show up except for one at the very end.
Oh, my gosh.
We had all these police cars showed up, and they said, nope, sorry, you can't be here. And so it's private property, so it's a little bit different, but that was a much different message than, hey, let's have some food and water for you.
Right. He was trying to get rid of you because you're tainting his ability to make $300 million when he was just a millionaire that did real estate out of New York before, and with a call center possibly in India. And now he's over here, and he's going on $500,000 or more with projects, and he has no proven track record. So I'm really, if there was vetting and we could see that there was a history and the setup was there and the structure was there, that'd be one thing. But we already know that when you went and you videotaped his office, there was no structure whatsoever. And what happened to giving work to Texans that need work right now? Why are we giving work to a company that came from New York that hasn't even been here? Clearly it's not a minority or women owned. I mean, I don't know what they went through with that, but $300 million is quite a bit of money. I mean, that's not the kind of contract, like you were saying, that would go through in just a couple of days like this happened. So there's got to be some answers. Now, let me ask you this. Have you seen the contract?
I've seen a redacted version, but about 10 days ago, I put in my Freedom of Information Act request, and apparently they're required to give you at least something after 10 days.
Yes.
So I was able to get some information yesterday. It didn't include the contract, but it did include every single company that bid on the project, and a couple of the names, especially one, was very surprising, not MTX.
Oh, really? Who was it? Do you have that list?
Well, yeah, I do, but that's my reveal. That's my reveal to you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to break it.
Okay, break it.
So we're concerned about privacy, right? And so MTX work could be taking our health data, personal data, sending it away to India, putting it in an app, putting it in a Salesforce database.
Yeah.
A lot of monitoring is my point.
Right.
Well, what would happen if MTX also had access to every single toll record?
Every single what record?
Toll record.
Toll.
In Texas.
Like where you drive on the toll road?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's so funny you're talking about that, because I'm looking at an article we were going to talk about you are being tracked, about license plate readers mounted on police cars, objects, road signs, bridges, and how they can monitor you through your car.
Well, so what are you saying, Grant? They would be able to track our movements?
I'm saying that one of the companies that bid on this project was the North Texas Tollway Authority.
What?
Oh.
Wow. Well, I want to say real quick, because you brought that up, because that's very interesting. A little notice, and it's another article by the American Civil Liberties Union. A little notice: surveillance technology designed to track the movements of every passing driver is fast proliferating on America's streets. Automatic license plates readers mounted on police cars or on objects like road signs and bridges. Toll roads use small high-speed cameras to photograph thousands of plates per minute. The information captured by the readers, including the license plate number and the date and the time and location of every scan, is being collected and sometimes pooled into regional sharing systems. As a result, enormous databases of innocent motorist location information are growing rapidly. This information is often retained for years or even indefinitely, with few or no restrictions to protected privacy rights, and sold to other companies. In July of 2012, the ACLU affiliates in 38 states and Washington sent Public Records Act requests to almost 600 local and state police departments, as well as other state and federal agencies, to obtain information on how these agencies use license plate readers. In response, they received 26,000 pages of documents detailing the use of the technology around the country.
Oh, my goodness.
Click on the map icon on the map to learn how police in your state license plate track your movements and your private information. And that's only the documents that they're getting from your car. The documents paint a startling picture of technology deployed with too few rules that is becoming a tool for mass routine location tracking and surveillance. License plate readers can serve a legitimate law enforcement purpose when they alert police to location of a car associated with a criminal investigation.
Right.
But such instances account for a tiny fraction of the license plate scans, and too many police departments are storing millions of records and selling that information about innocent drivers. Moreover, private companies are also using license plate readers and sharing information they collect with police with little or no oversight or privacy protections. A lack of regulation means the policies governing how long our local data is being kept vary. And it goes
So, Grant, are you saying that that the North Texas Toll Company,
Tollway Authority.
the North Texas Tollway Authority bid on this, and they have that kind of surveillance capability, and so
and
what
no
is your
restrictions on who they give it to.
yeah, and they
Well,
can sell it even.
To a company in India.
I just found out about the NTTA as far as being on this. But what? So I didn't. It was kind of when I saw that name, I was like, "Whoa, are
Yeah.
you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And so then I started. I asked somebody that's in the know, and he said, well, that's actually a semi-private entity. It's not a government entity. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, I didn't know that either. So all this information is semi-private. I don't know if they could have developed this, and I also don't know if they were maybe asked to do just a small part of the project. But the scary thing is all the surveillance that's already being done by MTX, and then adding all the location data, they could immediately track if somebody is in a certain location in a collaborative, what's the word? Collaborative, corroborative information. Collaborate.
Corroborate.
Corroborate. Yes.
Now, this is on
To corroborate. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
there was an article about MTX, and they're touting MTX. In fact, they're promoting what you're talking about, passing on private information and data they've collected about people that they're getting through different resources. MTX is also expanding. This is this article, and it's through. It's called MTX launches a coronavirus disease control and tracking application for U.S. government agencies using Google Cloud Platform. MTX is also expanding the application to provide a local health organizations similar capabilities for treating patients with symptoms or people who are at risk. This is to promote it. I'm surprised they're even promoting it like this. It provides a centralized monitoring and control system that enables actionable insights to mobilize the necessary resources quickly while adhering to all required government data privacy and security laws. But they're using Google Cloud, an application that they're with this other information. It says MTX Group is a global cloud technology partner that enables organizations to become a fit enterprise through digital transformation strategy. MTX is powered by the Maverick Artificial Intelligence Platform and has deep expertise in the public sector, providing proprietary designs and innovative concepts accelerators. So basically, they're using all this information and passing it on with no restrictions whatsoever to this.
Unfettered access.
Unfettered access. And that's really scary. And that goes to Carpenter versus the United States. And just
well, let me ask him this, though. So, Grant, you're concerned that if not only do they have all of our information, all of our social networking friends, all the people that we hang out with, they know everything. If they can track our movements, then they can come in and forcibly detain us, or how do you see that going?
I don't know all the ways of how it could go, but I do know that in Cedar Park, did you hear about this?
What happened? I did hear something. Yeah.
This was this past Tuesday. This is even before MTX was really been rolling, but this was this past Tuesday in Cedar Park, Texas. Two uniformed people, and I believe they were policemen, knocked at the door of a person in Cedar Park at the residence and said, we want to collect this information. And they wanted health information, they wanted personal information, and they didn't want just a few pieces of information. They wanted a truckload of information. Mm-hmm. The person had some exposure to coronavirus, so they wanted all this information. The person said, no, I'm not going to provide it. So then after that, this person got a threatening letter from the county health commissioner saying, you're going to provide this or else.
Oh my, that's what we were talking about in the first part of the show. They can't do that.
Yep.
Unless it's a state of emergency.
Right. But that goes to Carpenter versus United States.
And it goes to, I think, Hull's letter to Grant, and your message is that this was done hastily. Okay, so we made some mistakes. Now let's repeal it. Let's end the state of emergency and all of that. So what happened? They got a threatening letter, but that was it? I mean, that's not good, but...
Well, no, I don't know yet. We actually want to have him on our show, and if I talk to him, I'm going to get his information. I'll send it to you so you can have it on your show.
Oh, that'd be great.
Right. Well, that was kind of like they were doing to you at the airport when you came back from New York.
Oh, yeah.
The day after we had our show, you miraculously or oddly or I guess.
I know. Abbott repealed
ironically, it repealed, so you no longer, you just hit that 2-week part where.
That was for 12 days.
Right. And they were calling you and asking you and
they could
under
come
house
out to
arrest.
the house. If I got caught out on the street, they had my driver's license number. They could... Well, I was facing a fine of $1,000 and up to 180 days in jail or both. But they're actually starting to enforce this. I mean, Grant, when I went to New York, that's what I was facing. And the DPS officer that was put in charge of me actually called to see if I was at home.
Right. And my understanding is they were, and we read it in a couple of articles on our last show, that they're hiring the DPS off duty to be some of the tracers. And that's law enforcement. They can't have law enforcement come in your house with their little badge and their uniform telling you to give us information over, because that's a HIPAA violation.
I know.
And it's a complete violation of the Carpenter versus United States constitutional violation, Fourth Amendment. And I'm just going to read this one little part of what Carpenter versus U.S. is, because it's such an important
What
privacy.
year was that? 2017?
It was decided on June 22nd, 2018, but it was argued in November of 2017. Carpenter versus U.S. Was a landmark United States Supreme Court case concerning the privacy of historical cell phone location records. We're not even talking about HIPAA and all of your personal information
stuff,
that will be disclosed on a list and then sold to who knows who all over the world. And the last people we need to have our information are India and China and that group, right? The court held, we're getting the wind-up notice here, but basically your Fourth Amendment rights are being violated if there's not a search warrant or a court order or a true reason under the pandemic to give this information out. So if someone comes to your door, do not give them your HIPAA
That's
information
right.
under any circumstances.
Yeah, I don't give
Call
them
an
any
attorney.
information. Is there anything you want to add, Grant, before we got to wrap up? But is there anything?
I just want to say to your readers, and first of all, thank you for having me on the show and just for highlighting this. But I want to say I heard it from somebody else, so it's not original. But if we were talking about this a year ago, I would have been the first to say it. That's just conspiracy theory. That's ridiculous.
Yes, exactly.
And but it is not conspiracy
It
theory.
happened to Cheryl.
Yeah. And so you don't have to apologize for demanding privacy and constitutional right.
Right.
It doesn't matter to what level they're being abridged, and we don't have to wait for them to happen.
And you have to know your rights, too, just like you're
Yeah.
saying. Do not give out your personal information.
You
have
can't
Fourth
sit on
Amendment
your rights. Right.
And you have to object and do exactly what you're doing, Grant. You have to bring to the attention of the public because they do not know what's going on behind the scenes. And we are not
No.
We're conservative. This is crazy.
Right.
I know. But that's really it.
Okay.
Just to stand strong and don't be ashamed and be a leader and speak up and speak up on social media. You're already speaking up on the show, but
And
speak
thank
up on social media.
Senator
Yeah.
Hall and Senator Toft
Thank you,
and
yeah.
all of the legislatures that are
Mr.
helping
Fields.
us and bringing this up.
Yeah, and Hotze. Okay, Grant, thank you again for being on our
You bet.
show.
Love you
Blessings.
guys.
We love you too. And we
Okay.
want to remind our listeners to,
Serve God by serving others. And tune in next week, Legal Connection Show.
right, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Today's show was recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and all rights and ownership are reserved to Lone Star Community Radio. For more information regarding this program and Lone Star Community Radio, visit us online at irlonestar.com. Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station, serving the community with local programming on TV, radio, and online. If you enjoyed today's program, please support us by sponsorship or starting your own show. Contact us today by phone or text at 936-666-1084 or email the station at lscrstudios@gmail.com.